My sister-in-law excludes me from family photos on the trip I paid for. But now she's in ruins because I left her luxury room bill. Unpaid. You won't believe this. I'm writing this whole story while I'm on vacation in Miami. Yes, it's a shame. So I, 47 years old, along with my wife, Riaj, 42, her parents, 76 and 70, and her sister Ella, 38, came on vacation 2 days ago. It was supposed to be a fun trip, but Ella is making me have a bad time. She's simply ruining the trip and I don't know how to deal with this, Riaj. And I have been married for 10 years. We're both financially well off and travel a lot. We plan at least 3 good vacations a year and many weekend getaways to relax. We both have demanding jobs with good salaries, no children, and we like living this way for the past 2 years. We've made sure to take Riaj's parents on at least 1 trip per year. They're older, and her dad is dealing with serious health problems, so her mom can't travel alone with him. For this summer, her dad kindly asked to travel to Miami. Had their honeymoon here, and for some reason he fears this might be his last trip, God forbid. So we agreed. He even offered to share some expenses because, as you know, a week's vacation in Miami is expensive. But we declined and assured him we'd cover it since I'm earning well and they've been very good to me, however. This year, Riaj's sister Ella also joined us. She's not doing well financially and has 3 school-aged children. Every year when we plan a trip and then return, she feels sad because she hasn't been able to afford a trip since her honeymoon. This year, she directly asked if she could accompany us. I accepted, knowing I'd have to pay because obviously she can't afford a Miami vacation. I didn't mind too much since sometimes you have to support family. I made reservations for everyone, flights and hotels. But from the moment we landed, Ella started acting strange. And by strange, I mean she was making an effort to exclude me from everything. At first, I didn't think much of it. We arrived at a beach resort, and after settling in, Ella wanted to take a family photo. It seemed innocent enough, right? Wrong. Just when we were about to pose, she turned to me and said, "Oh, can you take the photo for us? We want just the 4 of us, Mom, Dad, Riaj, and me." I was bewildered, but didn't make a scene. Maybe they just wanted a photo of the original family. I thought it would end there, but it didn't. Ella made this a recurring theme throughout the trip. Every time we stopped at a picturesque place or did something fun, she'd say, "Just us 4," or "This is just for family." Guess who always held the camera? Me. Several times, Riaj defended me and said, "He's also part of the family." My in-laws also asked me to join, but Ella didn't miss an opportunity to leave me aside. The photos she posted on social media barely included me. It seemed like the 4 of them had come on vacation. It was frustrating. I wasn't included in half the trip's photos, and instead of making memories, I found myself playing photographer. Or bag carrier. Then, in the afternoon, we decided to spend time at the hotel pool. They had a beautiful infinity pool with an ocean view. I thought it would be a relaxing break, after all the walking we had done. When I was about to join everyone, in the water, Ella turned to me and said, "Can you stay outside for a moment? We want a girl's photo, just Riaj, Mom and me." I thought it was fine, no big deal. But after they took that photo, Ella made sure I was conveniently busy every time they took out the camera. First, it was just for the women. Then she wanted just the sisters. And of course, another with the original family. If she disliked my company so much, why did she even come with us? Yesterday, we went sightseeing on a quiet boat tour. It should have been a calm family day. But of course, Ella found a way to leave me aside again. Most activities at these places are arranged in seats for 4 people, 2 plus 2. Since we were 5, she suggested that Riaj's parents sit together in 1 row, and Ella would sit with Riaj in the next one. That would make it easier to take family photos and make memories. That left me alone. Ella turned to me and said, "Oh, you can take the next spot so it's more balanced." They even bought a souvenir photo from the ride, with me just sitting like a stranger. I understand that sometimes someone has to be left out of the frame, but why is it always me? Ella could also change places sometimes, right? Another night we went to an elegant seafood restaurant. It was one of those places where you're expected to make a reservation days in advance. But I had already taken care of all that, making sure we had a great table with a perfect sunset view. When we arrived at the restaurant, they led us to a round table for 6 people. Now, anyone who has been in this situation knows that the best seats are the ones facing the view. Naturally, I thought Riaj and I would sit together with her parents facing us, leaving Ella on one side. But when we were about to sit down, Ella quickly slid into the seat next to Riaj, and her parents took the 2 seats facing the view, leaving me on the side without a view. Squeezed between Riaj's parents and the waiter station, Riaj tried to protest, saying she wanted to sit with me, but Ella rudely replied, telling her to stop being so clingy and that it was a family trip. I bit my tongue. I thought, okay, it's just 1 meal. But halfway through dinner, when I tried to join the conversation about family stories, Ella kept changing the subject to things I wasn't involved in. She talked about childhood memories, high school trips, and inside jokes that naturally didn't include me. Riaj and even her parents tried to include me by giving context behind these stories, but Ella kept interrupting, making everything feel forced. By dessert, I was practically a ghost at the table, ignored while everyone laughed and reminisced. Today, we booked a spa day. I reserved a private suite for Riaj and me, another for the in-laws, and an individual room for Ella. However, my father-in-law didn't feel well and wanted to spend the day resting on the beach. I thought the 4 of us could still go and have fun, but Ella pulled another one of her moves. She said, "You should probably stay here and keep Dad company." It would be nice for just the women to do spa treatments together. I want to spend time with Mom and have a girls' day. I was furious but tried not to explode. I paid for all this, and now I was being told it was a women-only activity. After this, I wasn't in the mood to join anyway, so I stayed and relaxed with him. He gave me his advice. It was fun and comforting. I wanted to share my frustration about Ela, but kept it to myself so as not to ruin the atmosphere. Now, with 3 days remaining, I really can't stand Ela. However, I don't want to let my anger ruin the trip for my in-laws. How do I handle this situation? Edit. Yes, I expressed my concerns to Riyaj the other night. Ella understands that I felt hurt, but she says Ella might not be doing it on purpose. Growing up, they hardly took family vacations. My father-in-law was mostly deployed in the forces. So maybe Ela wants to make the most of the opportunity to be with family. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm overreacting or acting entitled. Think it's intrusive of me to feel entitled to be included in everything just because I paid for the trip. Am I overthinking this? Update 1. Thanks to everyone for being on my side. I know sometimes it doesn't seem right, but what she did wasn't okay. Spoiler, I got my revenge, but to find out, keep reading. At the end of the trip, I had had enough. I was being treated like a stranger on a trip I had paid for, and I felt my blood boiling every time Ella left me aside. The last straw came the day before we were supposed to leave. I took Riyaj aside and asked her why she wasn't defending me. I told her I felt like a nobody, and Ella could see how hurt I was. She sighed and said, I know, I see it, but confronting Ella will only make things worse. We don't want to ruin the trip for my parents, especially with Dad's condition. Can we let it slide for now? I didn't want to create drama either, especially with Riyaj's father's health condition. So I let it go at that moment, but deep down, I was already planning my revenge. I wasn't going to let Ela get away with treating me like this on a trip I had financed the day we were leaving. I told Rij to go to the airport with her parents and that I would go with Ella. Rij looked at me and said, I know what you're trying to do. I replied, of course, and now stay neutral like you've been throughout the whole trip. She finally nodded. Then I went to the hotel reception to settle the accounts. The hotel worked in such a way that, although room rentals were paid in advance, all extra charges like meals, room service, and activities were settled at checkout. I asked the manager to separate the bills for each suite, making up some excuse about taxes. He agreed it wasn't a big deal for them. I proceeded to pay everything for my suite and my in-laws, but for Ella's, I asked the manager to pass the bill to Ella. By then, Ridge and my in-laws had already gone to the airport. They needed to arrive early to arrange wheelchairs and such. The manager called Ella and asked her to come down to reception to settle her account. Ella came down immediately, and when the manager handed her the bill, you should have seen the expression on her face. She looked at me confused. I stood there with a serious face. She got a little nervous and asked, aren't you going to cover mine? I smiled and replied, I already paid for my family. You can cover yours. She hadn't realized how much she had accumulated during the trip. Room service, spa treatments, the minibar, and all the extras she had been ordering left her with a considerable bill. She passed her credit card only for it to be declined. Apparently, her card barely covered half the amount. She was furious, struggling to find a way to pay. She threw me pleading looks from time to time, but I felt no pity for Ella. She received nasty looks from hotel staff and other guests, which was quite satisfying. I just sat on the sofa and enjoyed the show. I was prepared to pay her bill if she came and apologized for her behavior, but she was too proud to do that. Instead, she expected me to voluntarily offer to pay. She ended up calling her husband, who was not at all happy about having to bail her out. The bill was almost a month of his salary or more. After an uncomfortable argument, she finally managed to get him to send the money to cover the bill, but she was furious. I wanted to leave her at the hotel to deal with the problem, but since the reservation was in my name, I couldn't. I was prepared to face the consequences and pay the bill if Ella couldn't cover it. But I had already achieved my revenge by embarrassing her. She finally managed to pay, and the hotel got us a taxi to the airport. She didn't speak to me after that. To add to her misery, she also hadn't checked in for her flight. So when we arrived at the airport, we were already in a hurry, and late. On top of that, Ella had to deal with the process of getting her boarding pass. As if that wasn't enough, I arranged for Riyaj, my in-laws, and me to be upgraded to business, leaving Ella in economy. I left her in line and went to priority boarding. When she finally boarded the flight, we were already seated. She walked past us but didn't speak to anyone. She was furious. The moment we landed, Ella went straight to her parents and told them everything, trying to paint me as the villain who abandoned her at the hotel. She made such a scene that she stressed her dad out. She started arguing right there at the airport, crying while narrating how I humiliated her in front of hotel staff and guests, and how I didn't upgrade her class or check her in. I calmly explained, in my perspective, that she had spent the entire trip excluding me and treating me like a stranger despite me paying for everything. So why should I cover her expenses if Ella didn't consider me part of the family? Riyaj's mother, trying to keep the peace, just shook her head and said, Ella, enough. We don't want to get involved. We saw how you kept him apart the whole time. We asked you to include him, but you had your own plans to leave him aside. Now deal with it. But Ella wasn't finished. She accused me of using money to control everyone and called me a horrible man. She looked at Rij and said, you allied with your husband to humiliate your sister, your own blood. You'll see what this man is going to do to you. He's going to cheat on you, and you won't be able to do anything because you're blinded by his money. This led to an ugly fight between Riyaj and Ela. Riyaj's dad, who had been mostly silent during the trip, simply said, "Ela, your brother-in-law has already done enough for you. If you can't appreciate it, better shut up." Absolute silence followed, and he asked me to take him home as soon as possible. I helped him into the car, and then we left, leaving Ela at the airport. She was too proud to join us in the car, even though she hadn't arranged transportation. Maybe she took a taxi back, which would have cost her a lot. Her house is about 100 to 120 kilometers from the airport. I dropped my in-laws at their house and both thanked me for everything. Their gratitude was all that mattered to me. My mother-in-law hugged me more than usual, and that made my day. After that, Rij and I returned home. We were both silent about the topic, ignoring the elephant in the room. The next day we went back to work, and life seemed to return to normal. But the other day, Rij broke the silence and said that Ela was having problems with her husband over the payment. He asked her to pay back every penny since she couldn't cover her excess spending. Now, she's in ruins from having paid that and her credit card bills. Rij has supported me, but admitted that maybe I took things a bit too far. Still, she acknowledged that Ela needed to learn a lesson. She had it coming. So Reddit, was I the bad guy for making her pay her own bills? Or did she deserve it after everything she put me through? Update 2. I received mixed reactions to my last post. Some people said, I went too far and basically wanted me to be a soft pushover. Well, I'm not that. I know my worth. I didn't expect Ela to treat me like I was her servant, but if I needed some respect, the minimum I expected was to be included. Right, as I mentioned, I was willing to pay if Ela came over and worked things out, but no, she wasn't willing to acknowledge her mistakes. Anyway, I don't owe anyone an explanation for my actions. I did what felt right. Ela has never been close to me. Sure, we see each other at family gatherings, and she visits Riyaj often, but beyond greetings, we barely have conversations. However, it didn't bother me to pay for her trip. That deserves some respect. No. As I mentioned in my last post, her husband wasn't thrilled about having to bail her out of that situation. With all modesty, I feel the bill was almost equivalent to his monthly income, who would be happy to spend a month's salary paying for his wife's extravagant hotel bill. As expected, Ela painted me as the villain in front of her husband. Things got so bad that he refused to attend Thanksgiving dinner at my in-laws' house because I would be there. Every year my mother-in-law organizes this dinner, and this year, she wanted to make it special, especially given the deterioration of my father-in-law's health. Her husband declined the invitation, and when my mother-in-law confronted him, he said he didn't want to share the table with someone as evil as me, who humiliates a person with fewer economic resources. My mother-in-law then told him the truth about Ela's behavior on the trip. She suggested he look at the vacation photos to see how blatantly she left me aside. There was barely a group photo that included me. Actually, I have a decent relationship with her husband, neither very close nor very distant. We meet every year at Thanksgiving and sometimes at other festivities. I always thought he was a good guy and never looked down on him or anyone else. After learning about all this through Rij, I hesitated to attend the dinner, but still went for my father-in-law's sake. Ela and her husband didn't show up. When my father-in-law was around, my mother-in-law said they couldn't come because they were visiting his parents. I didn't realize until later that this was just a lie to avoid stressing my father-in-law after he went to sleep. My mother-in-law told me the truth. She and her husband have been fighting non-stop, and she has become unreasonable. She constantly belittles him for his low income, and now expects him to take a second job in addition to his full-time work. He agreed, but only with the condition that he wouldn't be responsible for household chores or childcare. Ela didn't like that. I was surprised to learn that she only works 20 hours a week, but expects him to work more than 60 hours between 2 jobs and still do his part of the housework. My mother-in-law has been trying to advise Ela and make her understand the reality of her situation, but it seems Ela has tasted the luxury lifestyle and now wants to maintain it. Finally, my mother-in-law had to tell Ela that if she ends up divorced, she shouldn't expect her parents to intervene to help her. When Riyaj and I returned from dinner, we talked about how it was probably a mistake to take Ela on the trip in the first place. I keep remembering a phrase I read at one of the resorts once. Once you experience the luxury of a private island, you'll never step foot on a public island. The same goes for flying business class. I feel bad for her husband. The poor man is suffering. I hope Ela comes to her senses before it's too late. I wanted to share this update, thinking it might be useful for someone else dealing with similar family dynamics. It's frustrating when someone treats you like a stranger, especially when you're trying to be generous. Despite her behavior, I'm glad I went to Thanksgiving dinner for my father-in-law, and this shows how much I care about family, despite the tension. It's unfortunate that Ela is creating this division, but it seems the truth about her behavior is finally coming to light. I hope she takes time to think and realizes the impact of her attitude before it affects her relationships even more. Update 3. Well, everything has finally exploded with Ela and her husband, and divorce seems inevitable. The situation has become unsustainable between them, and he has reached his limit, especially because of the weight of Ela's debts and the constant stress this has added to his life. To begin with, I feel bad for him. It's not his fault for his wife's decisions or her attitude during the trip, but he's still the one paying part of the price in every sense. Since the conflict broke out between them, Ela has done nothing but continue blaming me for all her problems. It's easier for Ella to blame me and say that her debts and broken marriage are the result of my lack of support, rather than assume that things are this way because she has been unable to apologize, acknowledge her behavior, and face the consequences of her actions. Despite having multiple opportunities to make amends and ask for forgiveness, she clings to her version of events, and I don't intend to bear the guilt for her marriage falling apart. I've spoken with her parents, who don't support her in this matter either. In fact, they're frustrated with ELA and say she has done enough to deserve things to reach this point. In their own words, ELA has bought all the tickets to ruin her marriage. They know the situation is complex, but they can't even side with her in this story. They're worried about the impact this will have on the children and family dynamics. But they believe Ella must face the consequences of her decisions. I also spoke with her husband, who to my relief doesn't blame me for the situation. He commented that, although the debt issue was the trigger, they already had previous problems in their marriage, mainly due to Ella's lack of commitment to work and contribute to the household. Finally, they reached a breaking point. That's why they now live separately, since Ella has left the house. But don't think her husband kicked her out. Ella left by her own decision. The husband gave her two options. Either Ella stayed in the house with the children and took care of everything while he left, or he stayed and took care of the house and children, but then Ella had to leave. And well, to everyone's surprise, Ella chose the second option. She preferred to leave the house rather than make the effort to stay with her children and take care of the home. This gave me a completely new perspective on her husband. He's someone who really doesn't fear hard work. During one of our chats, I started considering the possibility of offering him a job opportunity at my company. People with his work ethic and commitment are always valuable on the team, and I think I could find him a position with a good salary and better benefits. In a way, I feel I owe it to him because although he has no fault in what his wife did, he's also a victim of the situation and is struggling to get ahead. So in summary, that's what has been happening lately. It's been an exhausting process for everyone, but I feel things are starting to get on track, albeit at a high cost for some people. Maybe I'll update again in a few months if things evolve. If Ella and her husband finally divorce, or if something relevant happens in my life. Edit. Some people asked me where Ella lives now, and it's at one of her friends' houses. Her parents made it very clear they didn't want to have her in their house. Update: for several months have passed since the last time I updated, and in this time, many things happened in my life and in my extended families. Now that everything has calmed down a bit in intensity, I want to tell you the consequences of what happened and how things have evolved. First, I have to start with sad news. My father-in-law passed away. In the end, he was right when he said the Miami trip would be his last great outing. It's devastating because I really loved that man, and losing him has been a hard blow for all of us. There were those who told me I should have confronted Ella's behavior earlier, that I should have put a stop to her rudeness from the first moment. However, I'm grateful I didn't. Enduring Ella during that trip meant that my father-in-law could enjoy a vacation with his family. We even had our moment on the beach where I still remember some things we talked about together. He was always there for me and treated me like a son. He gave me advice, helped me when I was just starting my life with Reg, and taught me more than I can put into words. I know my wife is going to miss him deeply, and my mother-in-law too, but I feel I've also lost someone who is a pillar in my life. Like when he helped us when we were starting our careers, he was a wise and generous man who asked for nothing in return for his help and love. I'm glad to know I could contribute in part to his happiness in his final days. Moving on to the topic of my sister-in-law and her divorce, the papers are already signed, so officially, Ella is divorced. I'm sure you're wondering what happened with her debts and my ex-brother-in-law. Well, during the divorce process, he presented her with two quite reasonable options for her situation. Ella could opt to share custody of the children, but in that case, she would be completely responsible for her personal debts. The credit card debt was still Ella's, but she would also have to return the money he used to cover the debt she had accumulated in Miami, deducted from the spousal support he had to pay her. The other option was for him to keep majority custody of the children. That is, they would live with him during the week and only spend weekends with Ella, and he would take care of the debt. Without much surprise, Ella chose the second option. This arrangement benefits him since he won't have to pay child support because the children spend most of their time with him. Some might think Ella lost an important financial opportunity by not wanting majority custody. And maybe it was a mistake for Ella from that perspective. But deep down, I think Ella simply doesn't have a genuine interest in her children. Proof of this is that she has already started dating other men, all of them with comfortable economic positions, according to the rumors that have reached us. It seems her intention was simply to disengage from her family responsibilities and find someone who could offer her the life of luxury she so desired. On the other hand, to give a positive ending to this update, since it started a bit low, my ex-brother-in-law is now officially my co-worker. As I mentioned earlier, I was able to get him a position at my company, and I'm very happy for him. Pay is better, and he also has benefits that suit him well, like daycare service at the office for his youngest child. However, we wanted to be strategic about timing. We made sure he started his new job at just the right moment, so he wouldn't have to pay higher spousal support due to his new salary. Despite how difficult all this has been for him, he says he can finally start to see light at the end of the tunnel. Life somehow goes on. We've all been through complicated times, but I feel fortunate to be able to say that the situation overall has improved. In fact, we're starting to plan our next trip. This time, it will be a different trip, since my father-in-law won't be with US for obvious reasons, and that leaves a void that will be difficult to fill. However, we're thinking of taking my mother-in-law, who needs a change of scenery and a little encouragement. I'm sure she'll also enjoy a family getaway that allows her to get distracted and move forward, at least as much as she can. And don't worry, we also have a trip scheduled for just Riyadh and me. We just wanted to do something nice for my mother-in-law. As you can imagine, there's someone who clearly won't be part of this trip. I think it's quite clear who I'm referring to. Ella is the last person we would want to invite, and I think we all know her presence is no longer welcome.